Hello, friends. It's Kathleen, author of From the Lookout. What a pleasure it is to be a guest presenter for the Ephraim Historical Foundation for its program, History Speaks. From the Lookout tells the story of Camp Meenahga, a girls' camp located in Peninsula State Park. Camp Meenahga was established by two St. Louis women, single parents in fact. Camp ran from 1916 to 1948. Peninsula State Park's first manager, A.E. Doolittle, was a big supporter of Camp Meenahga. This virtual History Speaks program features, first, a look at a few items in the Ephraim Historical Foundation's Meenahga collection. Second, one or two questions from the Lookout fans have submitted on the Facebook page titled From the Lookout. You'll see short PowerPoints and also a walk through part of the grounds of Old Camp Meenahga in Peninsula State Park. Let's get the business out of the way. Where can I purchase From the Lookout? Buy local if you can. You can purchase copies of From the Lookout from the Ephraim Historical Foundation, from Peninsula Bookman in Sister Bay, from Edge of Park in Fish Creek, or from me, the author. You can also purchase From the Lookout from Amazon. How do I purchase books for resale? Contact the Chicago Distribution Center. Your tax ID number for your store or your organization will be required. Have you seen From the Lookout Facebook page? There's a lot more information about the backstories of Camp Meenahga on that Facebook page. And remember, all royalties benefit the Peninsula State Park Education Fund. Hi friends, it's Kathleen, author of From the Lookout. I'm here in Peninsula State Park in Door County, Wisconsin, at one of my favorite places, Camp Meenahga, at least what's left of it. I want to walk you through the grounds, just a smidge, so you might be motivated, encouraged to get out of the house and come and explore and see signs of the past. So, where exactly am I in Peninsula State Park? I'm about, I'd say, a mile from the entrance, the Fish Creek entrance. I'm near Shore Road, and the first thing you're going to do when you come is drive in, of course, buy a sticker. Park system needs all your support, especially at this time. And look for a sign that says Skyline Trail. Skyline Trail leads past the campsite. Well, let's walk a little further towards the water. I don't know if I can walk backwards and talk. I'll give it a whirl. Nope, I turned around. I'm walking forwards. It's hard to believe that in 1916, two single moms, two single parents came here with big dreams and, gosh, were ready to make a lot of memories, not only for their children, but for the girls that would end up coming, over 3,000 during Camp Meenahga's history. So one of the things to look at when you park your car in the parking lot is to come over and look at this stone wall, this curving stone wall. These are the steps that once led down to the pier and the diving raft that Camp Meenahga had. And then also we see, get this oriented, just a little bit of what's left of the lookout. The lookout was built on an old lime kiln, and a person named Hubert Warfel is the one who kind of redesigned it. Go back in time and imagine that at one point there was a gazebo-like structure that was built on top of this lookout. And for me, the lookout was the perfect title to tell the story of Camp Meenahga. From the Lookout. From the Lookout was looking out on this big world from the safety of Camp Meenahga itself. It was the camp directors, Mrs. Mabley and Mrs. Clark, looking out for these girls, all kinds of things. In front of us, the water is very high this year, but in front of us, if I can get that in there, could kind of see a little bit the islands in the background. So Adventure Island would have been right in front of them. I'm here right against the water, and I'm looking at the steps of old Camp Meenahga. You can see how tumbled down they are, sadly. There's a cedar tree on one side of the steps. Those are really, gosh, all over the Door County, especially northern Door County shoreline. On these steps, if you walk down, and I would say this is, I wouldn't recommend it, it's very uneven footing. There is poison ivy. Leaflets 3, let it be. Poison ivy has a woody stem. Now, what I'm carefully doing is turning around, hopefully without falling. I want you to see the islands out here. The island in front of us, that's Adventure Island. That's where Charles Kinney started that boys' camp that ran from the 20s through the 50s. You can read about it from the lookout. Behind Adventure Island, which you can kind of see on the horizon, is Chambers Island. Let's go back to Adventure Island. Adventure Island is one of 4 islands in the Strawberry chain of islands. This year, the 4th one, Pirate, is underwater. Now, ships, smaller vessels, would go through this Strawberry Passage, which would be the water area that's between the land and the Strawberry Islands. Bigger vessels, the big schooners back in the day, the freighters today, go west in the passage that's west of Chambers Island. Both Chambers and Peninsula State Park have lighthouses, built the same year, 1868. So let's walk up. I'm going to grab onto this rock, that old rock. Gosh, isn't it beautiful? And I'm going to walk this way, and I'll give you another close-up view of what's left of the beloved lookout. The beloved lookout, just a little circular group of stones facing the water. Meenahga faced west to take in glorious sunset. All right, the next thing to watch for that I highly recommend looking at is the wayside. I'm going to grab my bag here before I walk up. Is the wayside, walk up the trail that is, the wayside sign that was developed a few years ago. I had a big part in that, kind of wrote the text on this sign, and also shout out to Sharon Anderson, who did the graphic work. So I'm going to take this camera off of here just for a minute. And I'm going to flip it around and show you the map. Let's take a look at this wayside sign. I developed this a number of years ago when I was naturalist at Peninsula State Park, and the graphic work was done by Sharon Anderson, who I worked with for, gosh, 2 decades, an excellent graphic artist here in Door County. There'll be some information about Camp Meenahga. Of course, you can see the picture of Mrs. Clark, one of the founders. That's her debutante picture. She was born in St. Louis, just like her business partner, Kitey Mabley. And I wanted to particularly draw your attention to the map that's on this sign. This same map appears in From the Lookout, and it will be key to helping you know what to look for when you walk the grounds and where to look. By the way, there's another picture that appears in From the Lookout. You can see the raft, not the raft, the pier leading out, the gazebo that Hubert Warfel built on that old lime kiln. To the left in the picture is the old Simon Evanson barn, which became the 100-foot lodge. And let's not forget all those local girls who worked at camp. Well, let's walk up the path. Let's carefully cross Shore Road and head up the old service drive that once led to Camp Meenahga. Now imagine to the right of the service drive, that would have been where the cottage was. Today, of course, it's overgrown. Lots of trees have come up since then. It would have been wide open. Also reflecting that cutover period from the 1880s to about 1900 when a lot of this was logged. Most of Peninsula's forest is second and third growth. To the right of the service drive, you might have seen a couple tents in there. You would have seen the tents that the young college boys and local boys lived in. Those kids were hired to help teach swimming, to help lift the canoes, to do some of the heavy lifting that it was thought girls couldn't do back in those days. There was also a tent for the kitchen staff. Sometimes local girls stayed there, sometimes there were kitchen staff from places like St. Louis. We're about to enter the trail itself. You can see a boot brush. To the left of the boot brush, it's not visible anymore because the honeysuckle is so overgrown here. There would be a low stone wall. This is where the 100-foot lodge was. Well, I've been trying to find the slab of the old pump house. I've been trying to find it because when I was working as naturalist here 25 years ago, somebody pointed it out to me, and Benno Clark's initials are carved in that concrete slab. So I found the slab. It's really overgrown, a lot of honeysuckle. I always thought, boy, this would be a really terrific project for a youth group or adults. As I'm digging in there, better be careful. Lots of poison ivy. Anyway, let me show you where it is. I did not find the initials, but just to give you, kind of orient you, it's sort of just past the boot brush that's here. And by the way, if you are so inclined to look for some of these old things, you really need permission from the park manager. Not so much to look for them, but to clear them. Since these are all invasive species, I don't think the manager would mind as long as you take precautions. But anyway, here's the concrete slab, and I don't have a brush with me, so I can't really get the soil off. You can see how thick the mat is that's grown up on it. Again, this is all honeysuckle here. Okay, be fun to reveal those initials again. There are a couple other concrete slabs that are throughout the Meenahga site as well. And I might as well point out poison ivy. You can be sure I am going to go wash up really good before when I'm done with this. Leaflets 3, let it be. Leaflets 3, let it be. Here's another one. There's an oil on poison ivy called urushiol, and some people react to it. Some think they don't react, but the more you're exposed, the greater your chance of reacting. So anyway, let's walk up the path here. I'm gonna take another pause and be back with you in a minute. I wanted you to be sure to see this 4-seater. That's one of the fancy Johnnies that Camp Meenahga, actually this is a 5-seater, one of the fancy Johnnies that Camp Meenahga girls used. Of course, there was no electricity and no running water for most of Meenahga's history. Now this, but it looks like 5 rusty barrels in a concrete slab. And I would say it's, gosh, a good 80 yards from the tennis court, which is barely visible behind me. I'll walk back to the tennis court. So, this Johnny, old Johnny, the remains, are between the tennis court and the road. Again, being off trail, not always recommended. Better to do it in the fall, actually. Maybe the winter when the poison ivy's gone. You have to also remember that Door County does have a moderate to high tick population now. That wasn't always the case. Something changed over the past 20 years. And there have been cases of Lyme's disease documented in Door County. So be aware of that. Well, I just think it's remarkable how land reclaims itself. I'm a little bothered to see all this garlic mustard that's spread. That's a challenge. I'm walking up towards the tennis court. So the girls played tennis. Of course, they canoed and swam. They played archery. They played baseball. They played indoor things like jacks and ping pong, and there was a piano in the 100-foot lodge. A lot of music, a lot of singing. Okay, well, here we are at the tennis court, kind of unkempt. I hope the tennis court remains because it is a visual anchor for this Meenahga site. I think once it's gone, it will be hard for people to figure out where things were if they are not revealed once again through maybe volunteer work, clearing some of those old foundations. I think this is hilarious, though. Look at this sign that's been up here for years. Tennis isn't as popular at this spot as it was a number of years ago, but you can tell at one point it sure was. So I'm going to keep walking, I guess it'd be east, and I want to show you the site of the old amphitheater that the girls had, and they would do tableaux vivants, which are sort of posed scenes. This land sweeps down into a hollow, and here's where the girls did their plays. Later on, they would do performances. Well, for example, Anne of Green Gables. You can see to the left, there's a sign, there it is, that talks about skiing. This is part of a ski trail in the winter. Peninsula is a multi-use park. Let's keep going. I can't help but point out the tall-flowered buttercup. It's in the Ranunculaceae family, which the word origin means little frog. And that refers to the moist habitat these waxy yellow leaf flowers prefer. So this is a real trail. It's not a volunteer trail, it's a real one. To orient you, the tennis court is in front of me. Our car would be that way, but we're gonna go quickly down this way, and we'll take an overlook site at where the riding ring used to be. Here I am on the trail that leads down towards the riding ring. The tennis court would be in front of me, really maybe 100 yards, not very far ahead. Imagine this land was wide open back then. It had been cleared both by the cutover period in Wisconsin and the people who lived here. They logged off their land before they had to sell it to the state if they chose not to retain life leases. That's explained a little bit in From the Lookout. I think the riding instructors were fascinating characters. There were 3 men who were the riding instructors, and women were their assistants, less documented in the records, but there were women helping them out. In any case, all interesting characters. Parts of their biographies are revealed in From the Lookout. The horses that were here were saddlebred horses, beautiful saddlebred horses with names like Fandago, Chocolate, Daisy. And so girls were learning English riding. Towards the end of Meenahga's time in Peninsula State Park, that would have been just after World War II, and during World War II, there were years where pecan shells were brought up for the riding ring itself, for the ground layer. Hay was gotten from the Canoed farm on Middle Road. There was a farm on Middle Road, kind of managed, leased by the Canoed family for many years. Not at Meenahga's beginning, but in the middle there, and certainly up into the 40s. So here we go. I'm just going to do a little panoramic sweep of it. Now this was also the place somewhere in here where the basketball court was, and archery. Archery was a big deal. Remember that one of the big movie stars of the time was Errol Flynn, and he starred in, who knows it out there, Robin Hood. Famous movie back then. So we're walking back towards the parking lot. I'm walking west, kind of making a beeline. Sounds like a vireo. Here I am, look at me, here I am. Vireo bird. Somebody correct me online if I'm wrong on that. I wanted to show you the old stone wall. It is so overgrown in here, it's really remarkable. I'm gonna walk up to it, tiptoe. I don't see poison ivy right in here. Okay, it's really quite overgrown, quite hidden. Anyway, stone walls are certainly a signature feature of Door County. This stone wall, I'm sure, dates to the Simon and Emily Evanson farm. That was really, the buildings were the basis for what became Camp Meenahga. Stone walls, so important, such a signature look for Door County. A lot of rock. That rock is dolostone, formed over 400 million years ago at the edge of a Silurian or saltwater sea. Kind of amazing. Mrs. Clark's good friend, Elizabeth Crendon, who lived on Cottage Row in Fish Creek, was known for sculpting really the length of Cottage Row and Fish Creek with stone walls and grottos and staircases from the mansions, we would call them mansions, that were built there. And I should really give a shout out to Henry Eckert I. Elizabeth wasn't always out there lifting the stones. She was directing. She probably did some of the work, but kind of directing. And local Fish Creek guy, Henry Eckert, did a lot of that stonework. In fact, Elizabeth Crendon, Camp Meenahga, Alice or Clark's good friend, was so into this stonework that she bought her own little quarry about 3 miles outside of Fish Creek. Who knew? And some of the stone and material needed to build those stone walls was gotten from the overflow parking lot near Nicolay Beach. I had another person tell me that that was an old gravel area, kind of a gravel pit, and that it would flood sometimes. That's probably because the water table is up high some years, certainly this year. And that she is a little girl camping here in the 40s. That's Jan, my friend Jan. Hello, Jan. She would look for pollywogs there. Always something to do. So, I've shown you a little bit of the Meenahga site. And I'm reminded of this phrase that we would use with kids a lot when I was an outdoor teacher, still consider myself an outdoor teacher. We would say, take only memories, leave only footprints. I'm reminded of another favorite saying. This one was written by a past director of the Wisconsin State Historical Society. And he wrote, place without memory adds up to no more than a point on a map, a simple geographical location. Memory impels us to preserve place. And the purpose, my purpose in writing From the Lookout, is to preserve place, the sense of place, and we do that by telling stories. Not just writing stories, but sharing them with others. We must preserve our irreplaceable Wisconsin natural and cultural landscapes. It's up to us. We need to do what we can, and we need to be ready to pass the baton on to the generations that come after us. We need to give them the tools, give them the information, give them the support, give them the motivation that will make them want to save these landscapes. It's up to us. Aren't we lucky? Aren't we lucky that people over 100 years ago wanted to establish state parks? Aren't we lucky that Mr. Doolittle, the park manager, the first park manager, decided this is a pretty good idea having a girls' camp here? Aren't we lucky that fate would have it that two single parents, kind of in financial difficulties, took a chance on each other, on this land, on a dream? That's the story of From the Lookout. Taking risks, surviving loss, and the true worth of friendship.
The Ephraim Historical Foundation has a significant and growing collection of Camp Meenahga artifacts and records. In 2019, Lawrence Day, grandson of Meenahga founder Alice Orr Clark, gifted original pack and paddle camp yearbooks and two large framed pictures. One is a 1930s era map drawn by Southern cartographer Carl Smith. The other is a whimsical painting by 1934 Meenahga camper Victoria M. Kancheff. The level of detail in each work of art is especially valuable. For example, did you know there was a salt lick for a time at Camp Meenahga? And of course we can see the riding ring drawn there. The painting on the right includes many details. There's Eagle Tower, there's a row of white tents. Archery, tennis, and horseback riding are all referenced in this painting. By the way, this 1930s painting reflects the style of animation that was really coming into play at the time. It really looks a lot like the cartoon drawings of Felix the Cat. My favorite piece in the Ephraim Historical Foundation's Meenahga collection is the banjolin. One day I'll tell you the whole story of how this banjolin was rescued from an East Coast garbage dump. It's really quite amazing. More amazing are the names on the banjo, including names of the Turnbull twins. Catherine and Janet Turnbull, daughters of the Green Bay Packers' first president, attended Camp Meenahga in the 1920s. Other notable Meenahga people include Clark Clifford, Secretary of Defense during the Vietnam War, interior designer Helen Stern, Edith Leopold, James Howard, a flying tiger during World War II, Hack Noyes, former UW basketball coach and later conservationist, Adolpha Meyer, Angel of Baton. Many of these people's stories are told in videos on the From the Lookout Facebook page. Janice Chamberlain also attended Camp Meenahga. She's pictured here sitting at the lookout. She's the girl with hair below her shoulders all the way on the right, and I would guess she's sitting next to her best friend from camp, Peanuts McDonald. Janice Chamberlain married Scott Pierce, who is the brother of Barbara Pierce Bush. Recently, on From the Lookout Facebook page, Barb asked what kinds of meals were served at Camp Meenahga. A section in the book called Good Eating does describe some of the food. On the whole, it was good old-fashioned wholesome food, a meat, a vegetable. The meal at noon, what we would say call lunch today, was a bigger meal than the evening meal most often. Camp Meenahga often served lamb, not necessarily from Door County, but brought up from Milwaukee or Chicago. And they also served some fish, but not salmon. Salmon wasn't introduced into Lake Michigan until 1964. Meenahga would have served trout, probably some bass, maybe some perch, but really lake trout. Desserts were also very important, including devils, which are described in the book From the Lookout. If girls couldn't satisfy their sweet tooth at camp, they'd hike or even canoe to Ephraim. They might stop at Hanson's or Wilson's ice cream parlor. In Meenahga's early years, Wilson's advertised the new banana split in the Pack and Paddle. That was Camp Meenahga's yearbook. In this picture from the 1940s, it looks like girls are eating a sweet called velvets, and velvets are described in From the Lookout. Of course, local girls and boys and adults from Door County made all of this good eating possible. One of the favorite foods for breakfast, served on Sundays, were homemade sour cream donuts. They were delicious. And in the Lookout, you'll find out what happened when a mouse got into the donuts one morning. Oh, what a tragedy. Kitchen staff worked in the 100-foot lodge, which was a remodeled threshing barn. While they worked, the girls might be playing ping pong, probably playing the piano, perhaps reading a book from the library, or practicing recitations on Sunday evenings. The lodge was a busy place. Outside was the place for athletics. Sports like archery, look at the size of those bows, tennis, sailing, and horseback riding. When you read From the Lookout, you'll discover just how much women's athletics has changed in the United States and continues to change. Meenahga witnessed remarkable change over its 33-year history. Meenahga years spanned 2 world wars and the Great Depression. From the Lookout can be read in a breezy fashion, and there's nothing wrong with that. It is a happy tale of a bygone era. From the Lookout can also be read as a soft reflection of a great nation that was and still is trying to understand issues of each individual's role in community, no matter one's gender, race, or ethnic background. Another question asked on From the Lookout's Facebook page was, how long did it take you to write the book? 20 years. It started out as a pamphlet. Over time, it became clear to me that this story warranted more than a page or 2. I interviewed several people, as did other park staff, funded by grants. Pack and Paddle yearbooks, luckily saved, and now in the Ephraim Historical Foundation collection, were a primary resource. Many people were interviewed, but I regret not making the time to interview more. Life and work got in the way. On the other hand, people have come forward since publication of From the Lookout. People like the family of Peg Egan, a Door County philanthropist, who is listed in the book's roster, but by her maiden name. I had no idea that Peg Egan was a Camp Meenahga counselor. So if you have stories related to Camp Meenahga, stories you've experienced yourself or heard told by your parents or grandparents, please reach out and share them. Perhaps this fall I'll be able to share more thought from a writer's perspective, including the critical way technology shaped this book, specifically the rise of online resources. That really proved critical in tracking down some of these stories. Until then, be well and see you on the trail.